Emilia Clarke on playing Daenerys on Game of Thrones STAR2.com. When Game of Thrones debuted on HBO in 2011, the series based on the epic fantasy novels A Song of Ice and Fire by George R.R. Martin featured a lot of new faces. One of those practically fresh out of acting school, Clarke was entrusted with the role of Daenerys Targaryen, who would become one of the main characters on the show. Not to mention, at a meeting with Clarke in London, the 32-year-old actress acknowledges that Game of Thrones has definitely changed her life. Since appearing on Lord Knows What I'd Be Without Dany, Where I'd Be, What I'd Be Doing, says the Londoner, conveying a cheerful and warm disposition during this interview on a chilly February morning. I had absolutely no idea what it was I was walking into. I had no idea about anything when I started the show. Nothing, not this combination photo of images shows Emilia Clarke portraying Daenerys Targaryen in the early season of Game of Thrones right in the latest. The journey of Daenerys is the biggest gift an actor could be given, because you get a chance to flex every kind of muscle, continues Clarke, who recently shared in a first-person essay in that she's weathered 2 life-threatening brain hemorrhages since 2011. Despite her health issues while making Game of Thrones, Clarke, full name Emilia Isabel Euphemia Rose Clarke, has never failed to lend her character gravitas. And she did this for Emilia Clarke at the premiere of the final season of Game of Thrones in New York, April 3, 2019. Photo Reuters, but Clarke, projecting that famous English trait of self-deprecation, says that it was more of a case of fake it till you make it thing. A lot of Daenerys scenes have been in front of a lot of people, saying big speeches. So as an actor, I am definitely one to do as you're told. So when they asked, there is no denying the reach of Game of Thrones has gone beyond television. Its influences on TV itself, it has elevated the fantasy genre to a more serious status, a genre TV execs once perceived was only appealing to 12 to 15-year-old boys. Game of Thrones proved with every season that TV can be a medium for great storytelling, and there is no need to compromise on the quality of its backdrop, costumes, actors, visual effects, and action sequences. Series that followed Game of Thrones, like Vikings, Outlander, and The 100, are proof of how this fantasy drama has somewhat shaped the landscape of television. On April 15, HBO will premiere Game of Thrones' 8th and final season comprising 6 episodes, with the running time of each episode between 58 and 82 minutes. The finale, airing May 20, is written and directed by showrunners David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, the 2 men who took on the mammoth task of adapting the complex novels for TV in the first place. Clarke confesses she's fine with the series coming to an end. I am a big fan of television shows finishing even when you're ready for more, and are still as engaged with it as you were from the beginning, she says. She reasons that, of course, you want very much for everyone to be happy with the ending. But for the final season, Game of Thrones, in the simplest summary, is about 9 powerful families eyeing the Iron Throne to become the ruler of all the lands in Westeros. Bran has the tough gig of telling Jon and Daenerys the truth behind Jon's parentage. But a running narrative has been of the oncoming winter and the creatures called the White Walkers that thrive in the cold. Led by Night King, in the last episode of Season 7, Night King with the turned dragon, Vice Ryan destroyed the wall, marking the start of the Great War between the living and the dead. Also, when we last saw Daenerys, she was heading to Winterfell alongside Jon Snow Kit Harington to fight against this unstoppable enemy. Jon will finally know something. Meanwhile, at Winterfell, Bran Stark and Samwell Tarly have discovered the truth behind Jon's parentage, which might disrupt his newly formed romantic relationship with Daenerys. Or not. When asked what happens to Daenerys next, Clarke sighs and replies, walking into Season 8 for Daenerys is much like for everyone else, kind of like walking on eggshells. I was sent the script for all the episodes of Season 8, and I read it in an afternoon. And I just left my Dani and John, she, Clarke fumbles, and pauses. It's the most contemporary kind of relationship that she's had in the show. They are incredibly, that's an interesting kind of relationship, I think. Tyrion is probably already sensing the trouble ahead. While Clarke is secretive about the plots, she shares that she was super emotional on the last day of filming as Daenerys. That was the day I realized that alcohol can also be a depressant, she starts. The last day was also magical. The crew from my brother, who was in the crew, recorded it, and when I heard it back, oh my god, I can't hear anything I am saying because I am crying too much. Every time it was a character's last day, we'd have dinner and get drunk. That was the day I was nursing a glass of wine and going, I don't feel any happier. I am feeling very. Clarke reiterates her gratitude for being part of the show. Game of Thrones has opened a lot of doors that would have been firmly shut to me otherwise. Not only has it allowed for some doors to open, now, when I walk into a room, they see me as this strong female protagonist, which gives me goosebumps. It's mad. Never in a million years would that be the case. That feels. The final season of Game of Thrones premieres April 15th, at 9 a.m., and repeats at 10 p.m., on HBO Astro Chapter 411. Catch up on all the STAR2.com is the lifestyle portal of the Star Media Group. STAR2.
Raindrop, drop top, smoking, no cooking the hot pot. Fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up, open the park, pot.